Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions concerning this watch. And today, you are looking at what may as well be my grail watch. While there are some hyper-exotics made in a few dozen pieces by esoteric manufacturers, I can say that Patek Philippe, my favorite historical brand for all time, and the 5236P inline perpetual calendar represent the ultimate match pour moi. The watch, launched in 2021, resurrects a 20th century Patek Philippe pocket watch inline perpetual calendar system seen on watches like the 843 and 844 references. This watch, the subject of 3 different patents to take that calendar system and transpose it to a wristwatch format, it is essentially a timepiece that builds on the precedent of the 2011 5235 regulator annual calendar, but this, despite being externally very similar, is a perpetual with movement upgrades to match. So it is bigger than the 5235, which is a white gold or rose gold watch that's 40.5. This is 41.3. In terms of its thickness, you could see it is 11.2 millimeters thick due to the micro rotor automatic, thinner than a center rotor, and then we have a 48.6 millimeter dimension lug tip to lug tip with a 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs. As a person who's quite familiar with the 5235, I can tell you that due to the presence of platinum in a larger case, the 5236 immediately feels more impressive. You can also see it's larger. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, the strap's very stiff. It hasn't been broken in, so it's compressing my wrist a little bit. And let me pull my sleeve back. We'll bring it back for the cuff shot. But you can see that if the strap weren't so tight, if it were broken in, the lugs would really not be over the edge of my wrist or too close. So I'd recommend this watch for a wrist my size or larger, let's say 16 centimeters circumference and up. Over the top always exaggerates the width of the watch, but here's your cuff shot, and you can really see. Bring my sleeve back down here so you can see. It will slide easily underneath the cuff. There's no issues there. So if you want to wear it formally underneath the cuff, it slides naturally underneath the dress sleeve. The watch features one of Patek's current straps, so that means you're going to get calf on the bottom, gator, large rectangular symmetrical scale on the top, and then a little folding clasp that represents a more aggressive closure than your standard friction fit, because you have this unique radial spring. So while it is technically still a friction fit clasp, the interlock of the 2 sides of the clasp and the spring makes it more secure than a typical friction fit arrangement. It is platinum to match the case. You could see the Calatrava Cross, the logo of the company, internally Patek Philippe and the city of origin. Rolling back to the case, you can see that this is a gloss strap with a monotone stitch. It's got a folded edge and large symmetrical rectangular scale gator, which is the most expensive cut of the beast. We have a little top Vesselton diamond between the lugs, letting you know that this is a modern era platinum Patek Philippe watch, recently returned from factory service too. The conical bezel, the cylindrical case, the sharp angular stepped lugs, all straight from the historic 3448 and 3450 perpetual calendars. So that is a nod to those references, but this is also a design used on the 5235 that has grown with Patek's modern wristwatch collection to become the vessel for the 5236. Calatrava Cross, the logo of the brand on the crown. I should mention, though this dial does use 2 sets of coplanar coaxial wheels for the date, it's still a grand lever program wheel perpetual calendar, which means you still have individual correctors for the individual displays. So while the interface is quite modern and required new engineering, the underlying architecture is what Patek has been using on its perpetual calendars for many decades. The dial, in a little nod to the 5235, features a vertical brushed metallic finish, almost like stainless steel, but it's got a gradient fade, so it's brighter at the center and darker at the edge. We have a little track that can be used, a chemin de fer, or a railroad track, an iron road to track the minutes. We have another one for the sub-seconds. We have faceted baton-style white gold hands with faceted white gold hour indices placed manually. You can see the ones at the quarters are actually a little bit larger. And the idea of using white gold is it will never tarnish or oxidize. Now, it is a perpetual calendar, which means that the system does not need to be corrected until the year 2100. So set it and forget it. It can deal with irregular length months. It can deal with leap years. Not a problem. You can see how the calendar system operates. It's a double-digit grand date in addition to being an inline calendar. The moon phase actually doesn't need to be set for 122 years. We have this little day-night indicator, so you know the hours during which you should not use the correctors to set the calendar. That's what that's there for. We also have the leap year indicator with the red 4 being the leap year. Remember, it is either the U.S. presidential election year or the Summer Olympics. That's how you can always keep track of the leap year. The discs for the calendar, you can see they sit in a very subtle faceted aperture. It's not a sheer clumsy cut through the dial. There's a little downward step, and then it's a blue on white printing that's highly attractive. Turn it all over, and yes, it's the same base that you'll find on the 5235, but this version of the 31260, Petit Second Quantième Linear, or I should say Quantième and Moon, so it's both Quantième with a linear display and lunaire. So 31260 PSQL, the movement itself includes a module for the calendar on the dial side, which means the casing up diameter is a mighty 34 millimeters, and even the 31 millimeter base nicely fills this case back. It is much bigger than the caliber 240 micro rotors. There is no confusing the two. The movement also features a new generation architecture. So we've got this lovely crescent as the bridge is profiled down from the barrel towards the escapement. Changes, aside from the dial side perpetual, if we're talking about the changes that make this the perpetual version, we have a mainspring that holds 20% more energy, and the 22-karat micro rotor in gold from the standard annual calendar becomes a denser and more efficient winding platinum on this model. You can also see that it features ceramic rotor bearings, 40 8-hour power reserve. We've got a free-sprung Gyromax style balance that's easy to adjust precisely via the variable inertia screws on the balance, but then it's also more shock resistant because a concussion can't move a mobile stud index. There is no mobile index. You can also see a difference compared to the off-again, on-again production of the 5235 and its silicon escapement. Here we have a silicon anti-magnetic hairspring, but we also have a conventional escapement with pallet stones, metal wheel, and anchor. Now, it's adjusted in 6 positions, and Patek Philippe is now saying its watches are going to be incredibly accurate to the point that they should gain no more than 2 to 3 seconds a day and lose no more than 1 second. So the chronometric precision, despite the lack of a COSC chronometer certification, it's far in excess of the COSC standards. It's 55 joule movement, and it has an incredible 503 parts, most of which are quite beautifully decorated. You can go on Patek's website and see how the calendar module is decorated, and then you can see the movement. While a medley of hand and mechanical finish, the hand elements do sell the look. So, for example, whereas Audemars Piguet would cut a bridge and leave the milling marks visible, Patek hand finishes. Actually, the AP bevels would look a lot like the bevels you'll see on the rotor, which is only machine anglaged, but the rest feature probably a finish applied with a handheld buffing tool on the edge of a drill. We also have jewel sync bevels. We have large, broad stripes across the bridges, considerably broader than the stripes you'll find on other Patek movements. Engine turning, tightly spaced and concentric on the base plate, which I really like. Black polished screw heads with chamfered slots in circumference, and this really gnarly converging bevel as part of the winding system that I absolutely adore, because while the movement does not include interior angles, it does include a sharp outward point, which can be just as difficult to execute from a finishing standpoint. It's 30 meters water resistant. No, Patek is now talking about its watches being a literal 30 meters water resistant. Nevertheless, I think there are better Patek watches to take swimming. This one, though, for all other occasions, my dream watch, and if it's yours, reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing details. Oh, one more thing that's important to include. It is a modern Patek caliber with hacking seconds, and now you know. Team Mosso at the1916company.com.